Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if how your doctor or researcher first talks to you about a study really matters for how well you stick with it? That's exactly the question a team of researchers set out to answer. They were looking at something called the Experience Sampling Method, or ESM. Now ESM is super interesting because it's all about understanding people's real lives as they happen. Think of it like this. You get pinged throughout the day on your phone, and you answer quick questions about how you're feeling, what you're doing, or who you're with. It's a way to capture your daily experience without you having to remember it all later, which can mess up your answers. But here is the tricky part. ESM studies can be a lot of work for participants. They need to remember to answer those pings, and sometimes they might just answer without really thinking. This can make the data go wonky, either because there is not enough of it or because the quality isn't great. So how do researchers make sure people do a good job? One of the first things they do is brief participants. They explain the study, how it works, and why it's important. But how they do that briefing might make a difference. Most studies either do it in person, face-to-face, or online, maybe through a video call. You'd think it probably doesn't matter much, right? But the researchers wanted to find out for sure. They decided to compare two ways of briefing online and in person. They recruited psychology students, and some got the briefing through a video call, while others met the researchers in person. Then everyone did a 7-day ESM study with 10 pings a day. The researchers wanted to see if the way they were briefed changed how much people participated, how good their answers were, and how they felt about the study. So, what did they find? Drum roll, please. Wow, so it didn't really matter overall. At first glance, it seems like both online and in-person briefings did a pretty similar job. People didn't report feeling way more burdened or less prepared depending on whether they met online or in person. And the overall amount of careless responding, that is, people just rushing through answers, was also pretty much the same. But here is where it gets really interesting. While the average participation or compliance was the same by the end, how people got there was different. People who had the online briefing started off super strong, answering almost all the pings. But then, over the week, their enthusiasm seemed to dip more quickly. On the other hand, those who met in person started out a little less enthusiastic, but their participation stayed pretty steady throughout the week. It didn't drop off as much. So, it seems like that in-person connection might have helped people stick with it over the long haul, even if it didn't make a big difference on day one. Why might this happen? Well, when you meet someone face-to-face, you get all those non-verbal cues. You can see if they're really understanding, and they can see if you're serious about the study. It might create a stronger sense of commitment or accountability. Online briefings, while convenient, might have more distractions. People might be tempted to multitask, or just not feel as connected to the researcher. Think about it this way. Imagine you're learning something new. Sometimes just being in the same room as a teacher helps you focus and feel more engaged than if you were just watching a video alone. So even though the online briefing was effective enough for people to get started and understand the task, it might not have provided that same level of sustained motivation that the in-person briefing did. This is really important for researchers. If you're doing a quick, simple ESM study, an online briefing might be perfectly fine, saving you time and money. It's more accessible for participants too, no need to travel. But if your study is longer, more complicated, or if you're working with people who might need a bit more support, maybe that in-person touch is still more valuable for keeping people engaged throughout the whole study. Now, like all studies, this one has some limitations because it was a quasi-experimental design, meaning the groups weren't randomly assigned on an individual level. There might be other small differences between the students who did the online briefing versus the in-person one. For example, maybe the students in the later recruitment phase were just slightly different in some way that affected their motivation. Also, the study was done with psychology students. These folks are already familiar with research and might be tech-savvy. So maybe they wouldn't struggle with an online briefing as much as other groups might. The researchers also point out that they used a single question to measure how sufficient people felt the briefing was. More in-depth questions could give a clearer picture. So, what's the big takeaway? For short and simple ESM studies, online briefings are likely a great efficient choice. But for longer or more demanding studies, or if you're working with certain populations, an in-person briefing might be better for keeping participants engaged and compliant over time. It seems that while technology makes things convenient, sometimes that human connection still plays a crucial role in keeping people motivated. And that's the scoop from RUBIN'S Mind Lab. What do you think? Have you ever participated in an ESM study? Did you have an online or in-person briefing? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you learned something new and subscribe for more breakdowns of fascinating psychology research. See you next time!